Scheduled September 23rd, City of Port Orchard Council meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. We're at our citizen comment period, and a couple of sign-ups, and then I'll recognize you. Paul, could you come up, please? And Paul, you don't have to tell us your full name for the record, or, whatever works for you.
Well, I'm not very anonymous.
Okay, whatever works. We used to ask for name and pertinent information. We don't anymore. So.
Paul Newchams. I've been a resident of the county for 9 years. I was on the design committee for a year or so of the city of Port Orchard. I stood for county commissioner for a while, about 5 or 6 years ago. But I had a gallery in downtown Port Orchard for about 5 years, and I was talking to the mayor a few days ago about some of the problems I had with the lack of recycling when I was here. But then I went out and did a survey of the restaurants and businesses in downtown Port Orchard, and I was happily surprised that people were doing recycling. Now, I guess maybe it's a combination of the county and the city and whoever is responsible. I'm very thankful, even though I don't have a business in downtown right now. But I was doing a little thinking about traffic when it was ladies' night out last Friday. I noticed the congestion of the traffic that backed up. I don't know. I don't think it was halfway to Gorst, but it was backed up. And I did some thinking, and I just want to share with you a little bit of the thinking. These maps were available in the gallery, and I was drawing what could we do, like split the roads both ways, have 2 lanes of traffic each way, and I'll hand these maps to the mayor when I'm finished. But I thought one start would be possibly considering the having no parking on one side of the street in the morning and no parking on the other side in the afternoon rush hours. And of course, whenever there's a parade, there's no parking at all. I know that. So I wonder whether it's just a suggestion that you do a survey of traffic flow on an ordinary week and maybe consider that. I realize that it would be a major problem, engineering problem, having 2 lanes each way and maybe split the lanes towards. May I finish the sentence? I guess.
Yeah, go ahead, finish the sentence.
Either using Kitsap Street as one way and Bay Street the other way, or Bay Street and then another lane closer to the water. Is it just a thought? And I thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll probably get back a hold of you and maybe talk some more about your ideas. I'm interested in hearing ideas. So. Okay, thank you. All right. Karen, could you please, and like I said, you heard my beginning speech, identify yourself if you'd like to, please.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. My name is Karen Goon, and I am the Kitsap County Administrator, new on the job. This is day 17, and the commissioners asked me to come down and speak to item 7F on your business agenda, the application for a vendor permit for the business establishment that's looking to locate their truck on the campus up the hill.
Okay, could you lift the mic up just a little closer to your mouth? 'Cause
Never been accused of being too short, so this is
Okay,
that's great.
thank you.
The commissioners wanted to thank you for the opportunity to speak on the application and to provide comment and to reiterate our desire to work with the city to look at perhaps citing an area on the campus for more than one vendor if another vendor should apply. We know we left you with some comments that may provide some narrowing of opportunities for where someone can locate a truck such as this, but we certainly wanted to reinforce our desire to work with the council to find an option that would be desirable to all. So I'm happy to answer any questions when you get to that portion of the agenda, but I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And welcome to Kitsap.
Thank you very much.
Of course, you moved, I asked you at the beginning, you came all the way from?
Pierce County.
Okay, so you're pretty familiar with
I'm
Kitsap.
sort of familiar, but spent a good number of years in Pierce County Public Works and Utilities, so I know the roads and sewer business, and I'm loving the job, and I'm really enjoying myself. And Kitsap County is a great place to work and recreate, and I'm enjoying everything I've learned so far.
Well, we have a great Public Works Director right over there, Mark Dorsey, so if you ever need to speak the language, I'm sure.
He speaks snowplows, okay. Great, thank you.
All right. Okay. All right. Let's see. Nobody else has signed up, but would you please come up?
Excuse me. I've been thinking about the rezoning of the DOD, and I have some concerns. And my first concern is that there was a comment made about 600 and 700 square foot apartments and maybe no parking. And one of the comments was that the younger people would walk and use the foot ferry and the bus system more. And I think that probably works in places that are a little bit larger than Port Orchard, but we cannot rely on the bus service. We cannot rely on the foot ferry service. And to have people build apartments for people that are supposed to rely on this will mean that they will have cars, and those cars will be parking on our streets and taking up the parking that we are now using. And it would be, I think, very similar to what's happening. I'm not sure if it's Ballard or Fremont, where they're building the 400 or 500 square foot places and had no parking, and the people are very upset about them now losing their parking around that area. So it might be a concept for in the future, but it's not for this time. And I'm also worried about that we always seem to be jumping for the developers, and I know that you rely on the tax base, but something happened maybe 20 years ago, even 30 years, but developers expect to make all their money back plus some and pay for a space that they continue to own by the people that are above them. And I think that we are just perpetuating a greed issue that is getting so out of line in our country. And by rezoning to 600 or 700 square foot apartments at this point in time just perpetuates that greed theory. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does any other member of the public wish to, please?
Good evening. I don't want to wait until the public hearing to provide this information and justification for my objection to the upcoming changes to the Port Orchard Municipal Code 13.06 Stormwater Utility. At the last council meeting, there was a lot of confusion as to where my concern regarding business licenses and commercial property came from. Well, here's where it came from. At the Utilities Committee meeting of January 20th, from minutes 1755 to 1829, there was an exchange that specifically stated that home businesses were not only considered as, but in some cases charged as, commercial for stormwater rates. If we are going to change 1306, let's include the definition in 1306.060, number 2, to state that commercial shall mean all property zoned commercial. That definition will protect home-based businesses where the current definition does not. And at the same time, while you're in budget talks, I hope that hard look is given at adding 3 FTEs to the stormwater utility. These positions are easier to start than to stop. We may have a short-term need for a couple of them, and that should be addressed, but not a long-term forever need. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone? Okay, please.
Good evening. My name is Alyssa Whittleton. I'm asking for backup when it comes to the recording process for our committee meetings that are held off-site. I normally go to the Utility and Finance Committee meetings, but I had to skip September 10th, only to find out that there was a malfunction of the recording device. And when I checked on that, it turned out to be the batteries had failed. And in light of that, I think we could probably remedy this situation by bringing extra batteries or perhaps even using somebody's iPhone that could record the minutes in order to get the clarity of what takes place. The written minutes are very brief, and in fact, what my husband had just brought up with what has been included in the utility minutes from before would have totally been negated if we hadn't had that in recorded minutes. So that's my request. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing no one else, we'll move on to the consent agenda. But before we start on that, I just wanted to remind the council that we have a revised sheet for agenda item 4C, which is on the consent agenda. And it's a very simple revision, but I wanted you to be aware that we have it in front of you. So let's go to the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I think you skipped number 3.
Oh, approval of the agenda.
Mr.
Okay.
Mayor, if I may,
Yes.
I'd like to remove business item 7D from the agenda.
I would second that.
Move it to
Remove it.
remove it. Remove. Okay. We have a motion to remove 7D. A second?
I second
A
that.
second. We have a motion and a second. Discussion.
I asked this to be removed to go back to public property. I think the 67,000 was a bit of a sticker shock, and I'd like to understand a little bit more about the future plans for Paul Powers Park in relationship to the overall park plan.
Any other comments? All right, seeing no more comments, we're going to be voting on removal of item 7D. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? All right, please scratch and remove item 7D. Approval of the agenda, yes.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to add an agenda item, and I would like us to discuss the hiring procedure and protocol for the city attorney.
You would like,
I would like the council to discuss a hiring procedure for the new city attorney.
How is that different from H?
H is specifically a committee to discuss whether the council be in-house or be contracted out. Has nothing to do with the process of hiring.
okay.
I'd like to move,
Hang on a minute, we need
Did second that.
we just had a second on new discussion item. Let's just put it in there at D. So it's discussion to hire, about hiring procedure for hiring the new attorney. Discussion about that.
We're just adding it, right?
We're adding it,
Yeah.
yes. All right, seeing no discussion, all those in favor of adding discussion item D, discussion about hiring procedure for hiring a new attorney. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Okay, that motion carries. Fred?
I would just like to move items F and G up in the agenda since we have, do you want to make? No, okay. Since we have representatives for those items, can we move them up to the top?
Okay, you want to move F to,
F and G would become A and B, and everything else would move down too.
okay, F and G would be, new A would be F, and B would be G. Okay, we have two actions there in one, and we have a motion and a second. A discussion. All right, seeing no discussion, we are voting to move item F and G to A and B. All those in favor say aye.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch a second. Who seconded that motion?
Jerry?
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? That motion carries. Yes, Mr. Clausen.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to add an item to the consent agenda, and it would be to excuse Mr. Patanzu from tonight's meeting.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to excuse Mr. Patansu, and that would be item D on the consent agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? That motion carries. All right, we have a revised agenda, and we are now ready to move forward on voting on the revised agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
I don't believe that there was a motion made.
Okay.
I move
Sorry.
approval of the agenda as amended.
All right, we have approval of the agenda as amended and discussion. No more discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, we have an approved amended agenda, and we're at the consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda as modified.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Seeing no discussion, we will be approving the consent agenda as revised. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you, that motion carries. All right, we don't have a scheduled presentation or public hearing, so we will just move on to new business item A, which is in fact business item F. So if you hang on just for a second, I'll get to my F, and okay. Ms. Reinerson, could you lead us into this, please?
Absolutely. So Ms. Michelle Roberts Wash, owner of Pinkinator Food Truck, is requesting permission to vend on city right-of-way around the Kitsap County campus. This matter was discussed at the July 28th Public Properties Committee, and their recommendation to the council was to allow a 90-day trial to see what public concerns may arise. At the August 19th council work study session, the council wanted to receive feedback from the county commissioners on a new proposed location at the corner of Klein and Division. Commissioner Garrido submitted a letter addressing the county's concern, which has been provided to the council. She wrote that using the corner of Klein and Division would increase safety concerns. She proposed other locations to consider, which include on-street parking on the southern portions of Klein, Taylor, and Sydney Avenue, the northern side of Dwight Street across from the administrative building, leasing county-owned parking stalls at one of the county's parking lots to the food vendor. And I believe Ms. Roberts Wash and a representative from the Commissioner's Office are both here in the audience should the council have questions. So staff's just looking at a recommendation from the council to bring forward to Ms. Wash.
Okay. What's your pleasure? Yes.
Well, actually, before I make a motion, I actually would like to hear from the vendor what she thinks of these locations before just choosing one of them off the deal. I don't know how we're gonna do that, but it makes no sense to me to try and choose one of these when I don't know what they're thinking.
You can do a motion for a TBD location. And then we'd have a motion.
I don't know.
Well, the question is, are we going to allow the applicant to speak?
I would think so.
we do the
I would imagine so. Do we need a motion to proceed?
I don't know.
Go ahead.
I think you need a
Gotta get
motion
it
on the floor to have
with a motion somehow.
Put in TBD in the blank.
Cindy looks like she has something.
I move to authorize the city clerk to allow temporary vending at the location of to be determined in accordance with Port Orchard Municipal Code 5.96.
Second.
Okay, second.
We have a motion and a second. Open for discussion. Mr. Clausen.
Well, my first concern is who's going to determine it? Are you expecting the vendor to determine?
Isn't the
or
vendor right there?
My question is, who's going to make the determination as to the location? The motion was to approve it with the location to be determined.
Right.
Is this police chief going to make that determination? Is our public works director going to make that determination? Is the vendor going to make the determination?
Well, I thought
It's a question.
I thought we would listen to her, hear what, if one of these actually appeals to her, and then modify, do what
Then
we
we
need to do.
modify the motion?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I'll wait.
So I'd like to hear from her.
Evening. So when I was here at the last meeting, the sites that I had talked about were not an option, I guess because of parking. So that's how we came about with Klein and Division, where the arrow's at. There was no other area. I'm just trying to think. I know there's a dirt road off of Division, but I believe jurors park there. Not positive.
Do you have this piece of paper?
I don't. I just have this.
Here, let me give you mine.
Actually, what I'd like to understand, which isn't in the drawing, is the three proposed locations. It would be nice if we had a visual, so I don't know if we have that electronic pen that we can just point, like, where, for example, do they mean by the southern portions of Klein, Taylor, and Sydney Avenue? Sydney southern portion doesn't make any sense to me, because Sydney is a north-south arterial. But it sounds like they didn't want the location where the arrow is, and I'm just trying to understand, what are the locations of the alternatives in the bullets in our packet? Do you understand?
I do not know
Okay.
where the alternative.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lady from the county? No?
Or we could figure it out probably if we had a
Let's get it
pointer.
done.
Sydney, of course, is on the right-hand side of the photo. Klein is on the left. Division is on, that bisects the photo. I believe Taylor is not shown on the photo. If you push it up north a little bit more, you'll get Taylor on the bottom of the photo. I'm sorry, no, on the
No,
bottom of the
that's
photo.
Dwight.
Push the photo up
Dwight's below.
away from you. There you go. And so, yeah, so Taylor's not shown on this photo.
Taylor's across from the jail.
That's correct.
She thinks this is it.
I believe so, yes. Okay. So the Division and Klein was a concern because of some of the traffic that we have in and around the area. But obviously, the city, and we didn't want to be a bad neighbor. But, there is parking in the area, but it is 2-hour parking. There is some 4-hour parking. And for us, the concern was just making sure that there was enough parking for the jurors and the citizens who come in and use the services at the administration building and the courthouse.
I think my general interpretation of the Commissioner Guido letter was just to move this facility to the south of the main building and main employee parking area, whether it be on Taylor or in the employee lot that's south of Taylor or somewhere in that area, moving it further south from Division, I mean, as a general statement.
Excuse me, did,
Okay, my question is, it doesn't, I'm not reading on here if they care if it's on Klein, if it's south, if it's on the east or west side of Klein.
Right, I think it's just, to me, I would just generally interpret it as they really want, it could be on Division, Sydney or Klein, as long as it's south of Taylor. In general, I think moving it far enough away that it's not impacting the parking around the facility. As a general interpretation.
So you think when they mean southern, they mean south of Taylor, is what you're thinking?
That's my interpretation.
It's not clear, because I would have thought they meant one south of Division, but it isn't clear. We're guessing, because when they say the southern portion of Klein and Sydney, that doesn't make any sense at all.
To me, again, I have to just look at it loosely and make the assumption based on combining that with the comment about, or actually releasing a space in the employee parking lot, that all occurs south of this main building and area. So it just seems like the general direction is from the county. I don't want to speak for Commissioner Guido because she's not here, but it seems like their request is that it just be from Taylor south on Klein or Sydney, or in a parking lot where it's in the assigned space, and not up anywhere near Division where you have people fighting for parking already. Again, that's just my interpretation based on the letter.
yeah, based on the letter, I agree with you. There's too many points that cause a hard spot here, safety concerns, steep hill right there. And according to the letter, that just is probably not a good spot.
Well,
Blind spot when approaching from Bay Street, those kind of concerns.
I mean, there's a sight distance issue. If somebody were to be westbound trying to turn north on Klein, to have that van there, because it would be right in the sight triangle. And I guess I wasn't asked previously, I would have also suggested at least moving further south on Klein, because the further you get away, you have less employee fighting for, premium spaces. Now, obviously that moves the vending vehicle with a further walking distance, but you're talking moving it a block, half a block or block. If people want to go there, they're going to walk that extra half block.
Council?
I guess there's the northern side of it, Dwight, which is the top part of the map or the picture, or the other side of the administration building, which would be downhill. That would be option number 2.
Yeah.
It'll be hard to go downhill though, being with the hot oil and everything on the truck.
Not having a level spot.
Yeah, I have levelers on the truck, but it only goes so high.
It's awfully, there's a steep grade both
Yeah.
cross-sectionally and longitudinally. And then Austin is also fairly steep and very, it's packed with, people are parking for both the administration and the Public Works building in that general area, so. I mean, to me, it seems to make sense to either have a space that the county assigns, as suggested in one of the employee lots, and it's just a leased space, or it's Taylor or south of Taylor on Klein.
I see your problem is that you probably want a space that's visible to people walking in and out of these buildings, if you could.
Right.
And this isn't going to offer that. So you're going to need to decide, you still want to play in the game here, or?
I don't think that Taylor would be, I don't think that Taylor would be a bad idea. I think if I'm able, I guess, to pass flyers around, to employees of the courthouse, that, if they like the food, they will come, so I'm open for options.
Actually, Michelle, the letter says, but the report doesn't, that you could possibly lease a county-owned parking stall off of Division. Now, I don't know which lot off of the Division they're talking about, but I think they only have one,
Yeah, they have,
which is the corner of Division and Sydney,
right.
Okay.
which
Is
is
that on the, is
visible
it the
and
dirt
level.
road?
Yeah, it's all dirt.
Okay.
Um,
But
That
it's
would be an
flat.
option too.
Well, what is the expense of renting a stall? Might as well get the numbers here.
We didn't have that analysis because we weren't sure if that was an option that the city or Ms. Walsh wanted to go. If I could be so bold as to make a suggestion that perhaps you continue this matter and allow Ms. Walsh to take a look at the campus and perhaps walk with one of our facilities people to see and go see and look at the various options that we're looking at and find if there's one that's suitable and meets everyone's criteria. That's one option that we can explore.
I actually like that, because if you decide that the parking lot lease situation is a better situation for you, there's no need for council to take action.
Correct.
You can just negotiate the lease with the
Correct.
county. So I'll make a motion if it's okay to...
Well, we got a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, we do.
Yep, I guess we could amend the motion, is there?
Yeah, amend the motion to
Say what you want to say?
Yes,
You
go
can
ahead.
continue it to the next meeting. You could
Amend the motion
withdraw
to-
your motion.
Sure, I withdraw, Cindy has to withdraw the motion.
I withdraw the motion.
Second.
Okay, now
Okay.
we're open for Jeff.
Okay,
And then I'll make a motion to temporarily suspend this issue until we get more information back from the vendor.
okay, motion to,
You really don't need that motion. If
No.
you
actually, we
withdraw,
don't,
there's
now
no
we can
action.
bring it up again at the next meeting.
Just put it on the agenda for
So-
the next meeting.
So then, no motion needed, we'll go ahead and be discussing this at the first opportunity we'll have. Okay. We're at item G, 7G, which is the new B. And I need to get my papers up here. Okay. Item 7G, the council was briefed at the September 16, 2004 council work-study session on the status of the appointment of interim legal services. After the council work-study session, it was determined that the city could not continue to operate without legal support due to the demand for legal review for various projects that department heads were working on. A contract for interim legal services was signed on September 17, 2014. After further review, an engagement letter for services is not required to have council approval. After discussions, it was thought best to enter into an interim agreement with Carroll Morris Law for temporary legal services. The recommendation is the mayor recommends that the council ratify the mayor's execution of the attached interim agreement for city attorney services. And, any questions, discussion? Yes, Brent.
I move to authorize the mayor to execute a professional services agreement with Carol Morris of Morris Law, PC, as the interim city attorney.
Okay, we have a motion
I'll second it.
and a second, open for discussion. Yes,
Oh, I know Ms. Morris from working with us, with the AWC issues, and I think she's a good attorney, but we haven't budgeted for $200 an hour. We budgeted for $165. And where's that money going to come from?
good question. I've done some number crunching, and let me get my notes for that. There's about $55,000 left in the budgeted amount for attorney services. That comes to about $14,000 a month for the remaining 4 months. That $14,000, I had an average, and I think the average all year was $13,000 a month. So unless something catastrophic comes up, we have within the budget that you've already passed, we shouldn't break out of that budgeted amount. And if we even begin to get close, of course, I would come back to the council and explain why and what we need to do to correct that deficiency. But I don't see that happening. I see that we have enough ample funds within the budget to cover us to the end of the year.
Okay, so let me ask this. I know that you worked hard to get a fair and a good deal for the city when we negotiated with the McGavick Graves. How did the $200 come about? Is that what was demanded, so to speak, or was that what was offered?
No, I think that was just a agreement that we reached as being a figure that was with, let's see, McGavick Graves is up to close to 172.50 or something like that with the increases that were dialed into the contract. So, no, I think we agreed that because this came up all of a sudden, and Carol had agreed to take us on at the spur of the moment, that I thought it was fair and reasonable to have a $200 figure. And of course, if you read the contract, I'm sure you did, it's a little less if somebody in her staff works on it that had less than 4 years' experience. And then if there's a paralegal working on it, it would also be less. So I think if we average out 4 months, I just bet you that it will be down really close to the same amount that we've been paying. The 200 will average down a little bit. So, any other questions?
Yes, I have a question. The duration of this particular agreement is through December 1st of 2014, and the rates quoted are effective until December 31st of 2014. My question is it appears as though, because we have the rates in effect till December 31st, that the Carol Morris Law Firm is willing to give us an extension until December 31st. My question is, if we don't have an agreement or a contract with another attorney, can we extend this? And if we do, what the terms of the extension would be?
Okay, my belief is that we would come to an agreement prior to that December deadline, and that we would say, we're not there yet, we haven't completed our search or whatever, and then I would negotiate for 2 or 3 months or a month, whatever we deem necessary. And I would expect it to be somewhere close or right at the same $200 an hour. Yes. Carol is here, so.
I'm Carol Morris. And to answer your question about the budget, I want to tell you that whatever you think it should be for the average for a month, I'll stick to it. You can set it. If you want to say it can't go over $14,000 a month, whatever you want to say, I won't go over that amount. And with regard to the termination date, if it turns out that the interim city services need to go beyond, I'll go beyond that at $200 an hour.
Thank you.
I have contracts with other cities that also have the same budget concerns, and sometimes they set a monthly limit, and then if it appears that I have to exceed it because there's some, new situation, then I talk to the mayor. But at this point in time, you don't foresee anything like that, and if we do, we'll talk.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Any other?
No, I would move to amend the motion then to not exceed, what was your number, Mr. Mayor, 14,000?
Well, that might be a little problematic because as the contract proceeds through the year, there was one outlying month where Mr. Jacoby charged us another $7,000 to tie the loose ends up on one thing. So he went way above the average of 13,000 for that 1 year, but that 1 month. But if you took the average of all the months, they were down.
But I thought Mr. Morris just agreed to not to go above that, and I was just trying to accommodate that.
I agree.
Okay.
I will not go over $14,000 in 1 month.
Okay. So that was friendly
So that's my motion.
amendment to the motion then, okay?
And there is
No, wait a minute, we didn't have a motion, did we? So
It was a motion to amend.
Yes, we had a
and
motion, and
There isn't a second, by the way.
no. Okay, does anybody wish to second that?
Second the amendment? Are you
Yes.
looking for a second? Why is everyone looking at me?
I don't know.
What? I'm sorry. Is this better?
Okay, we have a motion, and I still haven't heard a second. So is this going to die from lack of a second?
Looks like
It looks like it, okay. So we're back to the main motion, which is move to authorize mayor to execute professional service agreement with Carol Morris Law, PC, as interim city attorney. Any other discussion? Yes, Mr. Clausen.
just for information's sake, at the work study, I'd asked for a breakdown of our legal bills to date, and Mr. Martin provided that to me today. Through August, we've spent a total of about $99,200 in legal services, which averages $12,400 a month, not 14. Also, it appears, if I did my arithmetic correctly, we've averaged about 72 hours of services a month with the former law firm. So if you maintain that average, that's going to put it at about 14,000, just shy of 14,500 a month, if we maintain the same average level of usage at the $200 rate. I don't know if your 14 in your amendment would have been enough to, either we use her for fewer hours than what we've averaged through the year, or we adjust your proposed motion up $500.
Yes, Beck?
I would just like to, what I'm remembering from the work-study session and from the documentation that the mayor gave us at the work-study session, is that he proposed that we entered into an agreement with Morris Law for daily legal needs. And he was going to execute another agreement with Foster Pepper for what he said at the work-study was big items. So my question is, when we're talking about this 14,000, is that including both law firms?
Yes.
It is?
Yes. Yeah. It's total legal. And it would only be if Carol and the city decided that it was necessary to bring in that. And that agreement was a letter agreement.
Correct, but going to what Mr. Clausen was saying, is if we've averaged 72 hours a month, and if we're paying Morris Law $200 an hour, that takes us over 14,000 a month. That does not leave any room for any engagement we would have with Foster Pepper to stay within our current budget.
That would depend on what engagement looked like at the time. And,
I just want to be clear. I
Right,
just want everyone to be clear, if we're going to add something to our current motion that limits a dollar amount, we need to be clear what we're limiting.
Right, well, at this point, you haven't added anything to the motion. Nobody has added anything, so we're still talking about the main motion. So,
I have a question, if I might.
please.
I saw your communication that after staff meetings, staff and you decided that you needed to obtain an attorney immediately, and that's why we're here today with Carol Morris, and thank you for being here. But I had a question as far, in my background, I'm the HR director at KT, and I work with a labor attorney, and when an issue comes up that he may not be an expert in, he refers it to another attorney in the law office that might be an expert, and we get billed for that hourly rate, which may or may be different depending on that expertise of that attorney. I read the bio, and I understand you're very well-rounded, and I appreciate your background, but assuming that there are particular legal issues that you may not be, immediately up to snuff on, how would you handle something that came down the pike that might need a different attorney or a different counsel to look at?
Well, I am hiring another attorney beginning on October 1st, who has a tremendous amount of experience and also has a lot of background in public works and environmental law. With regard to specialty things like, personnel, because, your two areas of largest exposure to liability are personnel and land use, then I would recommend that you go out to a personnel attorney and hire one at a firm that specializes on that. I'm working with Black Diamond right now. I'm the Black Diamond City Attorney, and they use as their personnel attorney Sophia Maybe from Summit, Summit Law.
That's who we have as Summit. I know Sophia.
Right.
Okay.
They're really, really good.
Yep.
And the City of Pacific, they do that as well. It really isn't the same atmosphere or situation that it used to be, where you could have one city attorney that knew everything. You really have to specialize. And so what I've found is that I specialize in land use and general municipal, but I do call in other attorneys and recommend other attorneys when there's a problem, because I think you need the best representation possible. And given my experience with the damage lawsuits, working with the insurance pool, that also helps me. I also have a lot of friends who then I can, tell you this person is really good at this or really good at that. But I don't want you to be worried about your bills, really. That is something that we can be flexible on. I'm ready to work with you on the bills. The fact that I've worked so long as a city attorney has gotten me really up to speed so that I'm faster than most city attorneys. And I think if you were to call some of my clients, you would find out that my bills are really low compared to other city attorneys because I have a fast turnaround. So I really, if you're unhappy after you see a month's bill or a 2 months bill, I'd be really surprised.
Mm-hmm. And then, just a reminder, we have the routing number system, so we do collect data all the time on routing numbers and where the money is being spent, what particular issue is being worked on. So we have some management controls in place too. So I really do not see us breaking outside of the budgeted amount we have for this year under any circumstances. And if a circumstance came up, you'd be appraised of that early, and we'd have an executive session, and I'm sure we would be discussing it before we had a financial. No problem. Yes, Mr. Chang.
I would just like to say I think Ms. Morris is an excellent choice for interim legal representation. I appreciate how you made the Ensley billboard issue simple to understand when it was not a simple issue at all. And I thank you for that and making it almost, well, I won't want to say pleasant, but it was comprehensible. Yes.
Okay, any other discussion then on the motion?
Mayor, I just don't see how you think that if we need to pull in Pepper Foster, how we're going to stick to our budget when they charge between $3.50 and $4.50 an hour, depending on who's used from that firm. It seems like not enough homework has been done here, that you're going back and forth negotiating the fee right now. I wonder if we should have this discussed in finance.
Well, the mayor's perfectly within his right to hire an interim attorney, and we need an attorney.
I know we need
It's his responsibility and job to operate within the budget that's been approved. So it really is up to him, not us.
Then why are we voting on it?
It's a contract.
Okay, any other comments? All right, we're going to be voting on a motion to authorize the mayor to execute professional service agreement with Ms. Carol Morris Law Firm PC as interim city attorney. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
I'm a nay too.
You're opposed also?
Yes.
Let the record show the vote is 4-2. That motion carries. And Carol, could you come up and sit right up here at the desk? And let me read just a little short bio for the people in the audience and for the TV audience. Carol Morris earned her law degree from the University of Puget Sound in 1988. Carol currently serves as city attorney for Black Diamond, Pacific, Vader, and Ruston. She was city attorney for the city of Gig Harbor from 1994 to 2008, as assistant city attorney for Kent from 1990 to 1994. Carol has more than 20 years' experience as a city attorney or special legal counsel in more than 35 Washington cities. She has handled land use lawsuits for cities throughout Washington and Association of Washington Cities Risk Management Services Agency for over 20 years. Her litigation experience involves administrative appeals to the Growth Management Hearing Board, Shorelines Hearing Board, Pollution Control Board, as well as damage litigation before the Washington and federal courts. I think she's a winner, and I'm so glad that she considered this help that she's given us and is going to do it. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Let's see. We're moving on now to, now I've had so many corrections here. 7G is B. We're at adoption of resolution repealing resolution number 02113. Ms. Howard, could you lead us into this one, please?
Wage pay rates are addressed on a yearly basis for non-union employees as requested by the Finance Committee. The following is a change that is recommended by the Finance Committee to match the union contracts. 1.1, effective October 1st, 2014, the rates of pay set forth above shall be increased by 100% of that percentage increase set forth in all Urban Consumer Index, CPIU, between 1982 and 1984 equals 100 for the Seattle, Tacoma, Bremerton area for that period from June 2013 to June 2014, as is specified by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, United States Department of Labor. Provided, however, the COLA increase, if any, shall not be less than 0% nor more than 2.5%. Staff recommends adoption of a resolution repealing resolution number 021-13, approving the employee benefits policy to reflect a rate of pay increase of a 2% COLA effective October 1st, 2014.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Clausen.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt a resolution repealing resolution number 021-13, approving the employee benefit policy to reflect a rate of pay increase for a 2% COLA effective October 1, 2014 for non-union represented employees classified as FLSA non-exempt.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We're open for discussion.
Under discussion, Mr. Mayor, this is simply providing the non-represented staff the same increase that the represented folks have with their contracts, so just treating everybody the same.
Yes. Ms. Ashby.
I have a question because I've not been part of this process before. The 2% increase, because again, I'm not sure exactly how our payroll works. Is that increase, do we have a range, like say we have a classification, a clerk, and maybe the pay on that is $20, that has a minimum and a maximum? Is the 2% on the minimum and maximum increase, or is the 2% an actual raise to the employee based on their hourly rate?
It's on the spreadsheet. It's on the salary, the minimum
And the maximum?
Yes.
Okay.
But
The
then it
entire
would be,
pay schedule
well,
is-
we adjust the schedule to 2%, but it would be on their current hourly rate that they,
Okay, so that, say the schedule is from $20 an hour to $25 an hour. So you're going to increase the 20 and the 25 by 2%.
Yes.
Now, if I'm an employee that's making $23 an hour, my salary stays the same, or
No.
it goes up 2%?
The entire salary schedule with all of the steps, everything gets
No matter where
adjusted
you're
up
at, you'll get
2%.
2% more.
No matter where you
No matter
at,
where
you
you
get
are.
2%.
Right.
The base pay for each position the range gets adjusted 2%.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Yes.
I've said this at finance before, and I'll just kind of mention it again now, that I'm always concerned about the overall effect of something on city spending and where it puts us in relationship to the average of how much of the city's expenses are made up of salaries, and how we're doing percentage-wise. Are we moving up? Are we moving down? And where are we going with this? It isn't just what's fair to the employees, because I'm for that. I want to pay them a fair scale. It's where we are as a city in relationship to our overall spending on wages and salaries. And frankly, I don't know where we are in that, so I don't feel like I can vote on this other than just rubber stamping it, because I just don't have the information I need. So just letting you know.
Okay, other comments? Yes, Mr. Clausen.
I guess in response, I agree with you, Jerry, except that this body has approved the represented contracts, and in that approval, we specified how the increases would be determined, and this is keeping the non-represented, treating them the same. So this action, although it doesn't address yours, and I agree with you that the bigger picture is we need to look at that. I'm not sure the solution, but we need to look at that. I don't want to put that issue on the backs of our non-represented folks and say, well, we're not going to give you guys it, but we are the represented people. It's just not fair.
Yes, if you look at it, it says not less than 0 and not more than 2.5, and the 2 came out as the Seattle, what was that, Alan, that we?
CPIU.
It's CPIU. So I agree with Mr. Clausen. It just doesn't seem fair or equitable to try to do any kind of balancing on the backs of the non-represented. And they're the smaller group in the city too, I believe.
Just off the back of the envelope, about 75% are represented and then 25% are non-represented. And of the non-represented, the 20 to 25% of the employees, 2 of those individuals are contract already. So the smaller group, Mr. Mayor, is the non-represented.
It's the non-represented. So as far as moving the scale or moving the needle to more efficiency or less, or having more money, this isn't a big, it isn't going to move the needle much. So. Any other questions? Yes.
I appreciate the point that Councilman Childs has brought up. I don't believe actually it's going to affect how I vote for this, because I support this. But I had a quick question for the treasurer, and if you don't know, you can email me tomorrow. What percentage of our budget would you say goes to salary? Is it 2/3? Is it 3/4? Or?
I'll get you an exact, I get asked that a lot. I say around, about 65%, but I'll get you an exact.
Okay.
It's the vast majority of your expense in almost any business.
Yeah. Okay.
I think
Thank
it's
you.
about 67. I'm going to vote for 67%.
I'm going to say 2/3.
I also have a question. Do the represented employees have to pay dues, union dues?
Mm-hmm.
Do the unrepresented employees pay union dues?
No.
No.
So where's the fairness there? Because the represented employees are paying union dues.
If you want this non-represented group to get organized and join the union, they could do that and pay the union dues.
Well, I'm asking the difference. You said, I'm asking the difference. So the unrepresented are getting the benefits of the represented, but they're not paying for the representation.
As it relates to the COLA, yes, not all the other benefits.
All of it not?
Right.
Yeah.
There are things to consider, like interest arbitration eligible employees and perk decisions and on and on and on. And, I'm wholeheartedly in support of this, by the way. There's a complete difference, apples to oranges, when you talk about a represented employee that either has a guild or perk behind them or anything else versus a non-rep employee that has no representation. You'll see differences in accrual rates for vacation time sometimes, especially when we talk about who's eligible for overtime and not. And those folks, and Mark can attest to this, the job is what the job is what the job is, and if it takes him 90 hours that week to get it done, he gets nothing additional for that. And I don't think giving him an extra 2% and the rest of the non-reps 2% is going to bust the bank. And I agree with, excuse me, I agree with John's philosophy that withholding a 2% comparative wage adjustment to the non-reps is not the way to go. So I'll be supporting this.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, we're going to be voting on resolution repealing resolution number 02113, approving the employee benefits policy approving the employee benefits policy to reflect a rate of pay increase for a 2% COLA effective October 1st, 2014. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
One opposed. This motion carries. Thank you. Business item 7C, as it was printed out, is Mr. Dorsey. Could you lead us into item 7C, please?
I think
Seven B to do.
we're on
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yep.
7D.
Very similar to A.
Yeah, it
B.
is.
Okay. Right. Ms. Howard.
This is regarding the executive exempt employees that are non-union represented. Employee wage rates are addressed on a yearly basis for non-union employees requested by the Finance Committee. The following is a change that is recommended by the Finance Committee to match the union contracts. And this is as of effective October 1st, 2014, the rates of pay set forth above shall be increased by 100% of that percentage increase set forth in all Urban Consumers Index for the Seattle, Tacoma, Bremerton area for that period from June 2013 to June 2014, as is specified by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, United States Department of Labor, provided, however, the COLA increase, if any, shall not be less than 0%, nor more than 2.5%. Staff recommends adoption of a resolution repealing resolution number 022-13, approving the employee benefits policy to reflect a rate of pay increase for a 2% COLA effective October 1st, 2014.
Okay, thank you. Councilman, Mr. Clausen.
Mayor, I move to adopt a resolution repealing resolution number 022-13, approving the employee benefit policy to reflect a rate of pay increase for a 2% COLA effective October 1st, 2014 for non-union represented employees classified as FLSA executive exempt.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Open for discussion. Mr. Clausen.
Basically, this is the same thing. It's just the class of employees we have, the executive, if you will, department heads. And I guess in just response to your comments you made earlier, just as a small example, the difference in the labor agreements, at least in the public works and the police, if I remember correctly, both of them have a provision where we're providing them part of their work apparel, which the non-represented folks don't have that provision. So there are things that the represented folks are getting over and above what the non-represented people do because they are in a union and they have negotiated those terms in their contracts.
Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, we're going to be voting on repeal of resolution 022-13 and increasing pay by 2% COLA. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Opposed, that motion carries. Okay, now, Mr. Dorsey, we can go on to C.
Thank you, Your Honor, council members. On August 18th, 2014, the City of Port Orchard's Public Works Department issued a request for proposal, or RFP, from 3 local construction companies listed on the city's MRSC Small Works roster for the demolition and haul of a single-family residence and shed located at 312 Alder Lane. The lump sum bid items received were as follows. Casco Construction, $26,088, tax included. RV Associates and Sound Excavation did not submit. Upon review by staff, it was determined that Casco Construction was the lowest qualified bidder with a bid of $26,088, including tax. The Public Works Department has confirmed that the public work advertisement process was followed, that the proposal can be funded within the street fund of the approved 2014 budget, and no asbestos or lead is present within the project limits. The city will provide the demolition permit from PSCAA and the certificate of completion using contracted KCB Environmental Services. Staff recommends that the City Council authorize the mayor to execute a small works contract with Casco Construction Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $26,088 for the demolition and haul of the single-family residence located at 312 Alder Lane. Please note that funding for this project allocated within the approved 2014 budget does not include any of the federal funding. This will be the city match funding so that we didn't have to federalize the demolition project, which would have quadrupled the demolition costs.
But wouldn't that be a measure of progress in the project?
It would be, but not at that value.
Mr. Mayor? Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Okay. I move to authorize the mayor to execute small works contract with Casco Construction, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $26,088 for the demolition and haul of a single-family residence located at 312 Alder Lane.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Open the floor for discussion. Anybody wish to discuss questions? All right, seeing
I
no.
have a couple questions. Do you know if the contractor will be attempting to recycle any of the materials, if they can be recycled, such as door frames, hardware?
I would say no.
Okay. And why do you think no one else wanted to bid on this? Is demolition not considered attractive?
I'm not really sure. I know that the facility was open and our public works supervisor escorted all 3 contractors in and around the site to get bids, and I guess I would say, if anything, it's a time of a year scenario. Most contractors are usually fairly busy this time of year, wrapping up contracted work for 2014. So
I have a question. When you remove the foundation, you're going to have a hole. How did you bid that out? Is that going to be smoothed and leveled out?
Yeah, the scope of work included the removal of the building and the shed. It also includes a grading aspect. So, basically smoothing the site out, filling in the hole. So
we're not going to have any traps?
No
Any
traps.
Okay, thank you. Do you have another question, Mr. Chang?
Yeah, I know that we probably have to do this because it's a safety issue. I'm just going to vote no, though, because I'm disappointed that they're not making any attempt to recycle anything. I know we haven't discussed this previously, but I know that when we have properties that we don't maintain, which have to be demolished, I think at the very least we should try to recycle something out of them.
Well, I would, obviously you have your own vote. I would maybe suggest going to the building. The flooring was removed when we had somebody living in there and they were burning the flooring in the fireplace to stay warm. All the doors were removed by the owner, Mr. Miller, when he left as part of his relocation. He was allowed to take all the doors, all the cabinets are gone. Anything that's actually in there.
So you don't think there's anything worth salvaging?
There's nothing in there worth value. That's, I've been in the building a few times. I know the mayor would disagree with me, but from what I saw a lot of just rotted material. I don't see a lot of good structural members. And you also look at the cost of the demolition. If we were to go in and start removing things piece by piece to salvage old 2x12s, that cost of $26,000 is going to go up. This is basically going in with an excavator and just crushing it, hauling
Crunching
it away.
it down, yeah.
So you're going to increase the cost by trying to salvage.
I'm just a little sad that a year ago, we had a couple of nonprofit church groups that said they would like to consider us leasing it to them for $1 a year for 5 years, and they were going to use it for, transitional housing, and they were going to do all the fix-up, and I'm just sad that we're not doing something like that. But another year has went by, there's been more water damage, and as long as we're not willing to allow somebody a use like I just mentioned, then the best thing to do is take it down, fill the hole. But it wouldn't be my number one choice, but I don't get to vote on it, so that's where we're at there. Any other comments? All right, we're going to be voting a motion to consider authorizing the mayor to execute a small works roster contract with Casco Construction. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
For the record, or let the record show that there's one opposed, that motion carries. Okay, let's see. We're at a new item that was added, and that is discussion of hiring procedure for hiring a new attorney. Now, I just would like to make, to say that if we go to H, I did want to discuss similar subject, and it's an ad hoc committee for providing legal counsel for the city of Port Orchard.
Did you pass over item E, or are we taking that one out of order? Contract with the police chief?
I'm sorry, I guess I did.
He had inserted the new item where we removed.
Oh, that's
D.
right, that's right.
Okay.
Beck's discussion item.
This is not a bad time to point out, too, that we just called items A and B from the original agenda. We just called them A and B again when we actually inserted G
Right,
and F.
we should have moved them
And called
down.
them A and B, so I don't know what you're doing over there with the numbers, but as long as you
We'll
you
correct
can
the
keep
numbers.
track, that's great. But
Yeah, we'll correct the
I imagine the
numbers,
public's going, oh,
Yeah.
Randy, what would be this discussion item then with,
I believe, based on the motion made, that you're discussing the new item that Councilmember Ashby has added to the agenda.
right, but what alphabet?
I would just call it the new item D. I mean, we're going to clean it all up when we do the minutes. So
Okay.
you'll be
Old
good.
A and new A, old B and new B. They'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So is anybody confused that what we'll be talking about is going forward to the process of a new?
These at the same time or no?
It's item K that was moved to location D after D was removed. That's really what it is.
Sure.
I think it's
Think
important
about
to,
discussing them at the same time.
well, I think we should keep these straight because it's important to know that D was something that was removed from the agenda.
And
I
it'll
don't
be
think-
stricken from the minutes and noted.
Yeah,
I think I understood the purpose to have a deeper discussion rather than a resolution discussion for a vote on the ad hoc.
Oh, I
Because
see.
from what I understood back, one was the ad hoc item is to discuss whether or not the city attorney should be in-house or contracted. I understood Beck's motion to discuss was the process and the procedure and the protocols for hiring and obtaining a city attorney, whether they're in-house
Right,
or
that would make no
contracted.
difference whether they're in-house
So
or
it's a different issue, and I don't know if we want to talk them together or not, but that's what I understood from the motion.
Maybe we should keep them apart.
Okay. Beck, you want
Well, when I read the packet and saw the item for the ad hoc committee, and that it was to discuss whether the position should be in-house or be contracted out, it made me realize that we did not have a procedure in place for the selection of the city attorney. On further research with the MRSC, I found a opinion on there on the role of the city council in hiring, and it said the council can establish a process the mayor manager must use when filling a new or vacant position. If the council does nothing, the mayor manager need not advertise the position nor do anything else other than select someone to fill it. But a council may wish to establish a hiring process which might include mandatory advertising of job openings, the setting of minimum qualifications, and a requirement for job applications and interviews to help assure a larger pool of qualified applicants. If the council does create a hiring process, that process need to be followed by the mayor manager in making his or her selection. And I just felt it was prudent for the council to have a discussion on what procedure we would like to see in the selection process for the new city's legal counsel. And so I open it up to the council for a discussion.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Claus.
I think, although I think it's important that we have that discussion, I think trying to do it at this table would be a bit challenging, and I think there needs to be a little homework done personally to develop a recommendation. And if we were going to go down that path, I would recommend that the council develop an ad hoc committee that could maybe do some research and come back with a recommendation on a procedure and something for the council. Then we'd have something to debate, if you will. I think the other thing that would be valuable, and I believe it is also the council's role to, and it hasn't been done to my knowledge in a number of years, but to actually identify, I guess, the responsibilities or the tasks that we expect a city attorney to be able to perform. So I know our city code lays out some things in there now that what the city attorney is supposed to be doing and not doing, and so I think it's timely to have that reviewed as well if we're going to go through that process.
I like what Carol Morris was saying about the different, the way things have changed and where we get into specialists and stuff, and I actually like this discussion because that may very well be included in the process, whether the attorney we choose has what capabilities. Does that person have land use capabilities like yourself, Ms. Morris, or does that person need to be a jack of all trades, or do we put into the process that we'll hire specialists when needed for things that this contracted city attorney doesn't do? And I agree with what you're saying, John, that this may not be the place to have this discussion, but I think it's an important discussion, and limiting it, in my view, to ad hoc and 3 people. I'd rather see it at work study with all 7 of us. So that's my thought on it.
Mr. Mayor? I think it's a very important point that you're bringing up, and I can only know what I read, and I don't know anybody's background, but I would think that we would want to look forward a bit to see where some of our challenges are going to come from and look to heavy emphasis in that area, perhaps, whether it's property litigation or what, I don't know, whatever, or land use or whatever future looks like we're going to be in the next 3 years. And I think we need to explore this a bit further and what it is the council needs from legal counsel.
And further on that discussion, if you don't mind, firms like McAvick Graves and DiGiulio, Foster, Marshall, whatever the heck they call themselves over there, They have a lot of resources, but those fees are pretty high. Now, McGavick Graves did, I think they weren't working pro bono, but they were awful low considering what they did for us. Our chances of finding that again just might not be all that great. However, just dealing with the fact that in that discussion we have later, say, I assume we're all kind of leaning that way, those things that I think those all need to be on the table is to hire a big firm, hire a firm that's Carol Morris and mostly Carol Morris, or those all need to be discussed, I think. And the process. I like the idea that there'd be a process and it's in place.
And Mr. Clausen had his hand up.
Well, I was just going to add, Jerry, my thought of if we were to do a committee, that usually in a committee format, they have the ability to kind of gather all the pertinent pieces, and then I would agree that the next place would be at a work study where we'd all have an opportunity to look at what they've developed and what they're recommending and throw our 3 cents in on it.
Okay.
Inflation, it's no longer 2 cents, so.
I could go for that.
Anyway, we'd have an opportunity to debate it more before it actually comes back for, I'm just thinking the committee, it's easier for 3 people to get together and figure out what are the pertinent pieces and get the information for us all.
I could throw behind that.
Mr. Cartwright.
I was just going to say that you mentioned Sophia maybe, and we do work with her at Kitsap. We work with Bruce. We work with Shannon. We work with Kristen, a whole host of whatever attorney at Summit Law needs to be brought into whatever issue we're working on. And you addressed that, and that was fine. That's how that could work. And so the fee structure, it's all spelled out. Who does? If we get charged an hourly rate by this person, we know what it is, and et cetera. But all of that could be looked at, through a subcommittee or ad hoc committee or whatever. I think the most important thing that we do as a council, though, is to look forward to see what our future potential issues are and make sure those things are covered on however we go forward.
And again, I brought this issue up for the process, so that we can define a process. And then the other ad hoc committee was kind of whether it's in-house or whether we contract. That discussion was over here. And my concern was, what is the process going to look like? How's it going to be advertised? What are the qualifications? What's the interview procedures and that sort of thing? So that was why I brought it forward. And John, I like your idea of I'm assuming a 3-person, because we don't want to get into a 4-person committee, a 3-person committee to look at that and come back to work study. I also believe that if we are to have a committee and bring it back to work study, all of that needs to be done very timely.
Like tonight.
I'm glad we have an extension or the ability to extend the current contract. I think this could actually make sense if we added the procedures, responsibilities, future issues to item H along with an ad hoc committee. We can also adjust the ad hoc committee. For example, it was suggested there be 2 council members. It sounds like we want 3. I don't think we're that far apart on these 2 different items. I think the philosophical question for council, though, is do we want someone with hands-on experience or do we want an account manager? And that's something that we may determine as we go on and discuss the procedure.
And actually, I'd be curious to what, Carol, you have to think about what we just said.
Well, I participated in a number of different types of selection processes, and I'd be happy to gather all that information together for you and compile it and do a report, not charge you for it, so that you can see the different alternatives. I mean, cities go for, RFP. I've had University Place years ago decided to do a process where every interviewee had to be there all day long, and then they put us through a number of situations that you couldn't really prepare for. Like, they would put you in a room and say, you're going to have to draft a moratorium in an hour because you're going to have to go in front of the city council, this is an emergency, and you're going to have to explain to the press what the moratorium is for, how long it's going to be, and you're going to have to talk about the legal issues involved. And you had to do that without looking at anything, without any, statutes. And they just had one test after the other. I haven't heard of anybody doing that since.
Did they hire anyone?
Because nobody had to put in for that job.
It was an arduous process, but they eventually hired somebody at the end of that. But the, you can go through the, what's the name of that firm that they're headhunters, but of course they charge you for that. There are a number of cities right now looking for in-house counsel. There are also a number of cities that are looking for outside city attorney services. I think Bainbridge Island had an outside counsel, and then they were looking for someone in-house, and they just hired Lisa Marshall over there. Federal Way, they have an in-house attorney, and they're looking for a new attorney, and then there are other attorneys that, other cities that are looking for contract services just like you do. So there's just tons of RFPs on the internet that I've seen, and I've gone through these processes, and I can describe them for you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Well, I very much appreciate the fact that we don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you have, some information that we could use, that would be, invaluable to us.
All right. Other comments?
So who wants to be on the ad hoc committee? That's what I'd like to know. I don't, by the way.
Well,
I
I'd
would
like
like
to
to,
wait, I wanted to talk about H, about ad hoc committee for providing legal counsel for the city of Port Orchard. My suggestion was 2 council people, 2 staff, and the mayor sit down and decide where we're going to, all those questions. That's what I put it on the agenda for. But
Well,
we actually need to start working more together than apart. And if you pick 3 and start, doing that, I don't think that's,
well, if
it's
we were
not
working
asking-
together,
it's
Greg
not
would probably
asking-
still be here. so-
well, it's not asking whether, staff, who's the really most important people in the room.
Yeah, well,
So, but be that as it may, you guys decide and do whatever you want to do here, so.
what does everybody want?
Well, I think personally, there's 2 different issues, as Beck pointed out. The issue of in-house versus contract
Right.
is a separate subject. The process that we use for hiring whichever is something that I'm thinking is different, as well as I think we should be looking at those tasks as well as part of that process. If we're going to go through this, let's look at it, both issues. And I think, both of those could go on in parallel paths, but I think they are 2 different issues completely, personally. And I would move, and I'm going to step out here on the gangplank and probably get arrows pointed at me, but I would move that we establish an ad hoc committee that's made up of Beck Ashby and Mr. Cartwright, the HR person, and the one member who isn't present here tonight who can't defend himself, Mr. Patanzo. I think that's kind of a balanced committee that could look into those issues. I told you I was out here on this plank.
There's a motion.
Tell you what, I'll second that just for the sake of discussion.
There's a second discussion.
We could,
Sure.
I would like to know if anybody else that hasn't been chosen on this motion wants to be on the committee. Fred, do you want to be on the committee?
Actually, I was thinking of asking Cindy if she was interested in being on this committee. I'm like you, Jerry. I would defer to the committee.
Yeah, I would too.
Mm-hmm. Are you interested, Cindy?
Yes, I would be.
I would like to amend my motion, if the second would agree, that the members be Ms. Ashby and Mr. Cartwright and Ms. Luke O'Reilly.
I agree.
Okay.
Mr.
Amended
Patanzi
motion.
doesn't have to
I
come back.
noticed
Friendly
that Beck and
amendment?
Jeff are real quiet, so either you're agreeing or...
Guys fine with that?
I was going to say that for the purposes of this ad hoc subcommittee, that I do see it as 2 different issues, because the process for selection shouldn't matter as much whether it was going to be an internal or an external contracted attorney. It's still going to look for the same things, what they can do for us, what they can deliver, rates, and all of that. And Yeah, I don't have a problem being on that committee, and if we do decide to do the full-blown interview, I promise nobody will be here all day long doing mock types of things.
One thing I was going to ask is, given that there are so many specialties, as you were mentioning, why would we have an in-house attorney? Because the attorney would probably not be able to handle all the specialties. I mean, Carol was just saying,
Who oversees the meetings?
with all the complexities that we have in law these days, an internal attorney probably could not handle the demands. Is that correct? How did they handle that in other cities, Carol?
Well, you know, it depends on the size of the city, because what you'll find in a really, really small city is that the attorney who's the city attorney also does criminal prosecution. But if you get to a larger city, the city attorney never does criminal prosecution, because there's just so much for the city attorney to do on the civil side. So it really depends, as you said, that, you know, the needs of the city are paramount. But you'll find that a city attorney that's in-house really just is a generalist, and for the most part supervises outside counsel.
I see.
Coordinates between outside counsel and
Right.
staff.
I'd like to try to answer your question. This is an opportunity to look at both that we haven't had before, and we probably won't have again. So I agree with you. It doesn't, on the, you know, at the first blush, doesn't sound like the best deal, but it's an opportunity to look at it. I think that's the first thing an ad hoc committee should do, is say, well, look, we looked at both and we don't recommend this one, but we do recommend that one. Then we can go forward on, if it's an RFP, then that process goes forward. If it's an in-house, this would be a different process. So I just thought it would be an opportunity to assess our needs and look at both, you know, both types.
Well, that's an agenda item that we haven't arrived at yet.
Right.
Yeah.
So, any more discussion?
So we have a motion
So
and
we
a
have a
second.
motion on the floor, so.
What do we do?
Any more discussion on the motion? Seeing none. The motion is to appoint the three that you read into the record as ad hoc committee, council committee, to look into hiring processes and
Make a recommendation.
anything else that they want to look at, and that is not really clear, but I mean, I think it's the gist of what we all talked about. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Okay, that motion carries. Okay, let's see. Now, I'm going to call this old number E. Cindy, what number do you call it?
Approval amendment, you talking about?
Yeah.
That's still E.
Old E? Is that still
It would
E?
still be,
Uh-huh, still E.
Okay, okay, I thought it would shift because of the shifting above, but, okay. Clerk Reinerson, we'll straighten it all out either way it goes. So, okay, approval of amendment number 1, contract number 04114. Ms. Howard, could you lead us into that, please?
Upon review of the April 24th, 2014 Police Chief Employment Agreement, Contract 041-14, the Finance Department determined that the police chief's salary would not continue to be at least 5% greater the annual salary of the police commander's salary if calculated on the annual gross base salary. The police commander is receiving an additional longevity pay increase yearly on his anniversary date. This is in addition to the commander's base pay rate he is receiving. To maintain the police chief's salary at a 5% greater the annual salary of the police commander, the employment agreement needs to be amended to reflect the term annual gross salary. Staff recommends adoption of the amendment to the police chief employment agreement approving Section 4, salary and benefits, that reflects annual gross salary in order to keep the police chief at least 5% greater annual salary than the police commander.
Okay. What's your pleasure? Do you have a motion, Mr. Clausen?
To get this under the floor, I move to adopt the amendment to the police chief employment agreement approving Section 4 salary and benefits that reflects annual gross salary in order to keep the police chief with at least a 5% greater annual salary than the police commander.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion. Mr. Clausen?
Question, Deb. This is being changed due to the fact that the current commander has in the past received longevity, so their pay is elevated by that. When and if that individual ever retires and someone else is hired into that position without the longevity, then the separation would at that point be greater than 5%, theoretically?
Or would it be broken back to 5%?
Well, I can't imagine you rolling them back, but you may freeze that position.
John, the original calculation, if I was figured as the language is now being amended. Right, and so the original calculation keeps those individuals 5 percentages apart, but it is based on the commander's base rate. So you're right, if you change that base rate, it's going to change the calculation outcome.
So is the intent of this provision to maintain at least a 5% separation?
Yes, at least.
That if
right.
that commander that currently is receiving, is it just base or is it base plus longevity?
For the commander.
For the commander.
It's base plus his longevity.
Okay, so a new commander coming in may not have the longevity addition. So then, in theory, they would be greater than 5% because you would only be looking at the base pay of the commander, not base pay plus longevity.
Well, true in that explanation, but the contracts aren't set up to say that the salaries are set at the base of the commander.
It's 5% over the
Separation. It's to maintain a 5% separation, not the police chief's salary is only, the calculation is only for a separation. It doesn't set his salary. Because it does vary now. It's not exactly 5% apart.
Once this is approved, he would be at least 5% greater than the commander's salary plus
Always
longevity.
at least, right.
So with that adjustment, for round numbers, say he's making $100,000 a year. When you get a new commander that doesn't have longevity, the chief's pay would stay at $100,000, but the separation between the two would be greater, would it not?
Under that scenario, yes.
Okay. So we'll have to deal with that if we ever get another commander.
More discussion?
Totally confused you, Mr. Childs.
Well,
I can
you're
tell by your
assuming a new
blinking.
commander would start out lower than the current commander, right?
Correct.
Which may not be always the case.
The current commander is a longtime city employee who has many, many years of longevity added to his base pay. Presumably, whoever would replace our current commander at whatever point that is, would not have that longevity because not everybody's getting that now.
Just like the previous commander before Schuster didn't have near
Well,
that.
Schuster's been around for
29
quite a
years.
while.
How many?
29 years.
Yeah.
Schuster? Well, that's not so much.
I'm just curious as to
But he'd been
that
around
included
35
the longevity separation. So.
The longevity is part of the negotiated contract with the police department.
It was in previous contracts, yes.
See, what I'd be concerned about is that they kind of pull each other forward. But what we're saying is they won't. What we're saying is it could be 5%, but it could be 7%.
Well, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially what we're doing is, because the commander has longevity, we need to move the chief up so that we maintain that 5% separation.
Right, and we're not going to move him back.
You know, as they
Get a new
progress
guy.
through as we do the 2% COLAs and that stuff, each one would progress through at the same rate.
Right, but once we get the new guy,
The new guy, then all of a sudden, who doesn't have longevity, would be down here and
and so it'll
presumably
be 7%, so the chief will
Yeah,
get
it could be
his
7%. or
raises on his whatever he's got, and the other guy will get raises on less.
That's a future issue. I just wanted to make sure I understood it. That's why I asked.
Right.
And the reason we're making the language change is so that we don't have to come back when the commander gets an increase for some reason. It's just automatically built in that the chief will get the same increase.
The reason that we're back is because there was a drafting error, and the language said gross base salary, not annual gross salary. So when you use the word base, what you do is you go back to
Eliminates
base salaries rather than base annual salaries, and annual salaries include folks' longevity. But base salary as a defined term does not. So we're just cleaning up a caught error that was done in drafting.
So there's no fiscal impact?
The budget in 2014 calculated the 5% spread, and I believe it was on 2.5%, which was the greatest amount both individuals could earn. So for 2014, it doesn't have a budget impact, no. It was budgeted the way that council's being asked to make the change. Because we didn't catch the error till after we'd done the budget, and we did the budget according to the formula that we put in place to determine keeping the two individuals 5% apart.
Okay, any other questions? All right, seeing none, we're going to be adopting amendment to the police chief's employment agreement in section 4. And as we've read into the record, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. That motion carries. Thank you. Okay, let's see. Discussion items H. The City Council was briefed on September 16, 2014. The council work study session on the status of interim legal services. The city needs to start the process of hiring permanent legal counsel. An ad hoc committee will be formed to review, it already has been now, to review the city attorney's position and whether this position should be in-house or should continue to be contracted out. The committee will consist of the mayor, 2 council members, 2 city treasurer, and human resource coordinator. The mayor is seeking 2 council representatives to participate in these meetings. The meetings will be held at City Hall, 6 p.m. on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of the month. And I recommend that you appoint 2 representatives. I think that's a moot point at this time, so I'll just withdraw this item now.
Why is it a moot point? I guess I don't understand.
Well, I think you already have formed a 3-person committee.
Look at a completely different subject.
Which subject is that?
The process that is going to be used to hire a new city attorney.
Okay.
You're asking for a committee to be established to consider whether an attorney should be in-house or contracted out.
Well, the city needs to start the process of hiring a legal counsel, a permanent process. So, yeah, along with it, I put on here, we need to look at in-house or should we be contracted out. But it's one package deal. I think that same committee, my intent was the same committee would decide on what they recommend and then would move right into the process of how we're going to, you know.
Well,
I read it as a separate issue. I'm sorry.
if you think we've got it covered, then I'm fine with just forgetting it.
Okay.
Thinks we have it covered.
Well, I think the discussion should be had.
Your committee can do it.
I see this as an opportunity to ask that committee, or I don't know if that's the right way to say, but so we could say that one of the things we hope that committee will address is whether it should be in-house or contracted. There may be other issues that I believe that committee should also address. One might be is there any protocol to guide a council when they and the administrative or the mayor seem to be going in separate directions? There are some larger cities that have their own separate council. Are there any protocols that would suggest how we could deal with a situation such as that?
Great question.
That's a really hard question.
I mean,
and
just for them to address that, not to address it tonight, but I'd like this
you don't
committee
want me to
address.
answer. Okay.
Oh, you're welcome to, if you can. Yes.
Well, I can tell you cities like Seattle, the council has their own attorney. There are other cities like Bellevue, the council doesn't have its own attorney. I don't know any other large city where the council has its own attorney. But I can tell you that the best solution is always for the council and the mayor to try and work together whenever they can. And my philosophy on this is to make sure there's open communication with the council and the mayor so that you don't end up crosswise and the council doesn't feel like they've been left out of the decision-making process.
It's probably expensive too, carrying two attorneys.
Well, you can run into problems with whether or not that second attorney will get paid. There are cases where the council has gone out and hired its own attorney, and then the mayor is opposed to that, and then the issue is, who's going to get paid? And there are cases where the attorney who, the opinion wasn't liked, got stiffed on their fees.
Wow.
So it's an issue.
It's a rodeo.
Dude, way to make attorneys rich.
Yeah. Well, anyway.
So,
yeah, they can just.
So, yes.
I would imagine that the subcommittee could look at costing as one of the elements of a selection process. Obviously, that's going to be taken into consideration. So I don't think it would be too difficult to look at least as far as cost, internal versus external. And the mayor may have other thoughts on why that would be viewed as necessary, internal or external, I don't know. And I certainly can sit down with the mayor and hear him out if that's his choice.
This is all coming back to work
this.
study too, right, Joe?
Yeah, obviously it will all come back, so if that helps or not, but I do still think it's two different issues.
Yeah, see, in my mind, it's two different issues.
Yeah, it was in mine too.
Yeah, and had I not saw it as two separate issues, I wouldn't have brought forth the other discussion item. I see it as very distinct issues. And so I'm not opposed to this ad hoc committee discussing an in-house or contracted or that. That's completely separate from how we're going to advertise, how we're going to interview, what that process is going to be.
And I agree, and I wasn't suggesting that it'd be different. It's just the mayor had already said he was going to remove this from the agenda, and I still think that's an important discussion to have. And if it's not going to happen with that committee, it could have happened with the others, the only thing I was suggesting. But if the mayor chooses not to remove this, which I hope he does, then that discussion should take place as designed.
You think we should do two? Is a head nod to do both committees?
And what I was thinking.
Well, it seems, I guess we could, but it seems like we'd be running over, plowing the same field in just two different directions instead of just getting to it. I think somebody mentioned that this needs to be done in a fairly timely manner.
Mr. Mayor?
Mm-hmm.
Again, in reading at least the staff report. It says the city needs to start the process of hiring legal counsel. Yes. And it says an ad hoc committee will be formed to review the city attorney position and whether the position should be in-house or should continue to be contracted out. The committee will consist of the mayor, 2 council members, treasurer, blah, blah, blah. The mayor is seeking 2 council representatives. So, to me, I guess the way it was presented, the way I read it, was that you wanted to establish a committee that included 2 council members to look at the decision of whether we should hire an in-house attorney or whether we should continue to contract it out.
Okay,
That's how it's worded.
I agree. Shouldn't that be done before the ad hoc, 3-member ad
Well, I
hoc
think it
committee
could go
meets?
parallel, is what I said earlier. I think both paths could go on. You're talking about the decision of whether you want an in-house attorney or outside, while this other committee is looking at the process to be used to
Well, I
recruit.
could
and-
see where that would be confusing. I'm
Yeah,
sorry that it
so-
is, but my intent was to move through the whole process with this 7H. Decide first which way we're going to
Okay,
go,
well,
from, and then move through the process, so.
I guess I read this as 2 different issues, so.
I definitely did.
And I did too.
It looks like it's 2.
Well, it could be too with a lot of overlaps, and I'm not opposed to either.
Well, I wouldn't want to, I'll withdraw this because I don't want to bring the treasurer, the human resources in extra overtime until I see what what the process is going to look like, that you guys are going to be working on, so.
Well, do you want the committee then that's been established to also review the question of in-house and out?
I think you should. I think you should decide that before you go any further. I
Okay,
mean,
well, then I
it's
think-
either one of those should decide that first. I mean, that
I wouldn't argue that point.
logically make
My- I guess my point is that to make that decision, would they not need input from you and the staff?
yeah.
Yeah, whatever. You're going to withdraw it, then.
Okay, withdrawn. Approval of agenda item 19, work study session, meeting minutes. What's your pleasure?
I move approval of the August 19th work study session meeting minutes.
Okay, we have a motion. And no second at this point.
Second.
Second, we have a motion and a second. Any corrections, discussion? Seeing none. We're going to approve the, where am I at now? Oh. Approve the August 19th work study session minutes. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Nay. That motion carries. We're at J, approve August 26th city council meeting minutes.
Mayor move to approve the minutes as published.
Okay, Mr. Clausen.
Second.
Motion. And Mr. Chang, second. Any corrections? Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of approval of the August 26th city council meeting minutes, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay.
I have abstained from voting.
Okay, so let the record show that Councilwoman
Oh.
Ashby abstains.
I have to abstain as well. Thank you, Beck.
Okay, it's 2 abstentions, and that motion still carries. Thank you. Okay, let's see. We're at reports of council committees. Mr. Clausen.
Just that we have a finance committee scheduled for October 3rd.
Economic Development Tourism. Ms. Ashby.
And our next meeting is scheduled for October 13th, 10 o'clock, here in council chambers.
Okay, does anyone have a utility or sewer advisory committee for Mr. Patonsu? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Public Property Committee, Mr. Carter.
Our next meeting is October 13th at 8:30 here in Carolyn Powers Chamber. Excuse me, here in the council chamber, not over there. It's in this room.
Okay. Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, Mr. Chang.
No meeting scheduled currently.
Chimes and Lights.
I am going to ask that the meeting be moved to October 15th rather than the 8th due to 5 Wednesdays in the month. And that meeting will be at 3:30 at City Hall. I also want to, I think I'm going to wait and hold this for the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay, outside agency committee reports. Ms. Ashby.
Yes, since since I was at the last council meeting, I went to the the PSRC Transpol meeting, and at that time it was basically just a information meeting. We did not take any action at that meeting. Today we had the Kitsap Regional Coordinating Council's Executive Board meeting, and we discussed the West Sound Transportation Alliance. We did take action and made a minor change in the KRCC's funding requirement for this cycle only, which allowed Bremerton to get funding for their intersection, their curbing ADA requirements. We also had a presentation from Dave Williams, the Director of Governmental Relations with the AWC, and it was a very informative presentation on all of the city's needs to have perhaps redesign and refocus how they present their legislative ideas. And I believe that he made some effort or is going to appear before one of our work studies. Mr. Mayor, were you trying to arrange that?
I was going to ask that we maybe move it up because the next work study is clear at the end of next month.
Yeah, he had a very good discussion, and it was something that I personally felt the whole council would benefit from.
Well, the whole council needs to hear it.
Yeah.
Because they have a decision to make. And so he is going to come, but I'm just thinking that we need to maybe try to expedite it a little bit.
Expedite that. Then we spent the majority of our time today from 9:15 till noon with a study session regarding the agency review team recommendations. And this is for the ongoing viability, the function, form, and funding for KRCC. And that is also something that that particular committee will be bringing back to full council.
And if I may add, that is actually scheduled for October's work study session. So I believe Commissioner Gelder will be speaking on behalf of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are my reports.
So I'll be getting back to you about Mr. Williams.
Mr. Williams.
And having him come. So,
Kata?
Yes.
The Kitsap Economic Development Alliance met on the 18th, and preceding this meeting, we had a tour of Omohundro, and the mayor was there, and I think he'll probably want to say something about it because it was spectacular. That company would make any resident of Port Orchard extremely proud to know that that company operates in our community. They have parts and radar domes and things that are on F-16s and drones and Sikorsky helicopters, and you know what those parts say on them? They all say made in Port Orchard. That's what they say. So I don't know if any of those parts will ever be viewed by people that would rather not view them, but it was just so impressive. And I know the mayor wants to say something. There was 3 mayors there, including Mayor Mathis, and council member from Bainbridge Island and from Bremerton and from Paulsbo. And if you ever get a chance to go there, Mark and Cindy Sparks, the owners, are so down to earth and so cool. They're such great people. And like I say, it is, God bless America that a company like Omohundro is out there doing and looking after us, because they were absolutely great. Now in the KETA board meeting, we had the regular type things that we have. The treasurer reported that everything's moving along great. We're under budget, and we're on budget, I guess is the way he put it. And so that was good. Also during that board meeting, they did a presentation by Tim, oh shoot, what happened to me? Tim, the former executive director of the Port of Bremerton, Tim
Thompson,
geez. Anyway, on CADA and the Farnborough Air Show in Paris or London, not London, but it's Farnborough itself in England. And that also was very impressive because they made a lot of contacts. And, I just listened to that. Sometimes you think these groups that they put together in kind of a ad hoc sort of way, they're kind of spinning their wheels. I think something good's going to happen with this. I really think something great is going to happen with CADA and for our area. But like I said, I'll defer to the mayor because I know he was probably as proud as punch for what happened up at Omohundro because that was an impressive tour.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cartwright, do you have anybody else have a committee report? Okay, yes, I was present. Mr. Sparks is quite an ingenious individual. He has many patents involving aerospace. And
I think he said 12, actually.
well, he has 12 process patents, but he has many more patents than that.
Yeah.
And he has some really cool ideas and really neat processes. A nice group of folks there, 45 employees right now that work for him. And a very clean environment, and he's met all the federal requirements so that he can bid on anything and everything from, like you said, helicopters to big jets, small jets. So he's doing really well, and we're very proud that he chose to come to Port Orchard. And he and his wife did his due diligence, and they settled on Port Orchard. And they told us the reason they settled on Port Orchard was because of the quality of life in Port Orchard. And his employees seem to be having a good time. They're working hard, but I talked to a few of them, and they like it here in Port Orchard. And he brought quite a few of those 45 employees from California. And he brought all of his equipment, and it was a big job. I think he said it was like 30 trucks, 40-foot trucks that brought all of his equipment that he brought here. So,
This stuff is huge.
right. It's a big process.
This isn't little stuff.
This is not a small operation. It's a big operation. So we're really proud that he's here. In the back there on the table, I've got the new mayor's report, and this particular report's about Port Orchard and Port Orchard's veterans. And so it gives a lot of highlights about, I did a Points of Light award here about 3 months ago, and I honored veterans, so their pictures are in here. But also on the back and in other areas in here, it tells about what things are available for veterans. So it's online at www.city@portorchard.us, and just look up the latest September mayor's report. And so you can see that information that's available out there for veterans. Whatever they need, there should be somebody in the information in this to give them a phone number or get them some assistance. So that's about it for me. We'll go on to department heads.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
May I, before you go on to the department heads, I have an issue that just recently came to my attention. We have scheduled for the first meeting in October the discussion over the potential changes to our stormwater rates. And unfortunately, both Mr. Putanzo and I are going to be out of town on that particular meeting. So I was wondering if the council would be open to scheduling that vote for the following meeting, the subsequent meeting, so that we could all be a part of it.
Well,
22nd?
No.
I mean, the 21st?
21st. No, that's work study, 28th.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to weigh in with staff real quick before we.
20th of October? Is that what they're talking about?
No.
It's not going to matter to you if we do that or 28th or not.
Clerk Reinerson, do you have an idea how full the agenda is the next?
I believe the 28th is pretty free, so I would just
Okay, good.
make sure if there's any noticing requirements that you shift that back.
Okay, you want to agree to move that, or you want to vote to move it?
Then I would move that we move that action to
Second.
the agenda of the 28th.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay? Okay, so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Report department heads, Mr. Dorsey.
I have nothing this evening.
Mr. Martin.
Well, I'd like to thank Mr. Dorsey for yielding his time to the treasurer. This is the time of year where the treasurer is doing the 2013 audit, writing the 2015 budget, and managing your 2014 budget. So I'm not really sure what year it is, but it's somewhere between the three, depending on whatever issue comes across my desk. But we have completed with the mayor the interviews of the various department heads. We've received back the preliminary budget documents from them. And I would report that we're $752,797 out of balance between the requests and what our revenues are. We'll go back now and start to do some of the real heavy lifting and try to get this so that when we transmit the budget to you, it will be balanced. So we have a lot of challenges over the next 10 business days or so before we see that document. So that's what we're doing there, and we're very busy. And then add on top of that, my son, the middle son, gets married on Saturday in Wenatchee. So I'm going to go over, and I should go to that. So
Yeah, you should.
So I'm going to go over there.
Spare time.
I mean, well, actually, you guys don't care, but at midnight, my daughter flies in with the grandkids and everybody on Sunday night at midnight, and of course they're up and excited. And I come to work on Monday, and of course then they take off for Wenatchee, and then Travis, he drives in from driving for 4 days, so he's there now. So very exciting time. I'll go over there on Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Well, Carol, like I said, welcome and thank you. And do you have any words for us?
No, I think I said enough.
Reinerson, how about you?
So I actually have two reports. One on behalf of DCD, Nick Bond. So he has asked me to share, he apologized, he said that there wasn't anything on the agenda, so I believe he asked the mayor to be excused tonight, and then asked that I share that he will be sending the council members an email this week with some information, and he's asking that the mayor or a council, or the council, to call a special meeting for November 4th to discuss the 2014 comprehensive plan amendments. It's my understanding that they have gone through the planning commission process, and I believe that discussion took about 3 hours. So he assumed that based on that discussion that you guys would probably want to dedicate a whole evening to that. And so he's proposing November 4th at 7 p.m. It's a Tuesday, first Tuesday in November. He's, like I said, going to be sending you an email this week with the applications and the materials on those applications, and he's hoping that you can read that between now and November 4th. And he's hoping to treat it as a work study session, and he will look into it further to see if he will include it as a public hearing process as well. So if you have any questions, send him an email, and I'm sure he'd be happy to respond to you. So my report, I didn't have anything, but Councilmember Clausen had said that himself and Patanzu was going to be out October 14th, and I was going to bring up this item, so I will bring it up now instead. So November 11th is Veterans Day, and it is a regular council meeting. And the code states that if the regular council meeting falls on a holiday, that the next business day will be the council meeting. So at this point, I really don't have a clear indication as to whether that agenda would be full or if it would be empty. Preliminary, it looks like that's typically when we do some budget discussions, approvals. So I'm just asking if you guys can consider having the meeting November 12th as directed in the code. So just food for thought, and I will follow up with you guys at the end of October.
Okay.
Other than that, that's all I had.
Okay, thank you. We have nothing else on the agenda. Is there any good of the order comments?
Citizen comments?
Oh, citizens' comments, yes. Sorry, I forgot you guys. Please.
In closing, I would like to say that I am disappointed I did not hear a utility committee report. I know Mr. Batonso is gone, but I understand there's 2 committee members here. Maybe that is not the typical procedure, but if it could be, I think that would be important. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to make public comment? Seeing none? What's your pleasure? Should we stand adjourned? We are adjourned. Thank you for being here tonight.